So today we're here to talk about allowing or getting our members involved with speaking to their judges in their communities. And I know that I had a bunch of questions whenever I first got started. And so we're hoping to answer some of those questions today and give you a little bit of tools so you can move forward in your community. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to us. So first of all, I want to say welcome. I'm Maggie from the Statewide Leadership Council. The Statewide Leadership Council is a group of system impacted individuals. We all have lived experience, and we are looking to make meaningful change within the state legislature that will actually affect people like us. So that's what we're doing. And there are system impacted people here on this call, and I will let them introduce themselves. Cynthia?
Thank you, Maggie. My name is Cynthia Simons, and I am the Women's Policy Fellow at the Texas Criminal Justice Coalition and also a member of the Statewide Leadership Committee. And we are, just like Maggie said, all formerly incarcerated and looking to show up as leaders in our community and make impact on some of the most counterproductive policies that exist within our legislation.
Thank you, Cynthia. Benny?
Yeah, my name is Benny Hernandez, and I'm also part of the Statewide Leadership Council. And as Maggie said earlier, our members may have questions on how to be effective in their approach to advocacy. So that is the purpose of this. And Maggie, thank you for having me.
Thank you, Benny. And Miss Jennifer Toon. Everybody, welcome Miss Toon.
Hey. So my name is Jennifer Toon, and I actually work at the Coalition of Texans with Disabilities as a mental health peer policy fellow. But I am also one of the founding members of the Statewide Leadership Council, and I'm really excited, as always, to talk about parole.
Yay! So yes, like Jennifer said, we're here to talk about parole because we have made some interesting revelations throughout our work. We've noticed, we know from our lived experience how parole actually works. And through this work, we have been noticing that some people who are in charge of parole don't know exactly how parole works. And some people who are making the laws about parole don't actually know how parole works. So hopefully we can give you some guidance on how to speak to your judges and your local communities for education purposes, and maybe get some support on our common sense parole package. So first of all, I'm going to let Jennifer tell her experience story with parole and how she experienced parole.
Okay, so let's start when I was in court. Okay, so I was signing for my non-aggravated 12-year sentence. It was a plea bargain, and I thought that was the best choice that I could have made in that situation, to just start moving forward with getting my life back together and really tackling the things that had put me back involved in the criminal justice system again. And so I remember my attorney, which was a nice guy who knew how to do his attorney stuff, and he did a great job in court. And I remember him telling me, well, it's a non-aggravated 12-year sentence. And for anybody that's watching, non-aggravated means that you don't have to do half your time. So an aggravated sentence, which is usually, there's a whole list of aggravated charges, right? Usually more serious charges. That you have to do half of that sentence. So you would be required to do 6 flat years on that 12 years before you were eligible for parole. So non-aggravated offenses mean that your time is calculated and with good time, work time, and day for day kind of stuff. And so I would have been eligible for parole after about 1.5 years. he was like, Miss Toon, you've already been in jail for a year. So you'll do a turnaround when you go to TDCJ. Now I was on parole at the time for offense when I was younger, when I was a teenager. And I remember looking at my attorney and I said, no, no, that's not what's going to happen. He goes, well, yeah, like you're eligible after a year and a half, and you do what you need to do, keep your nose clean, get some stuff back together, and you'll be home. I said, you realize I have a prior, and I violated my parole. Now he goes, yeah, like he was like, I know. I said, I am going to be there for a very long time. And he just thought, I guess he thought that I had lost my mind while I was in jail. But it's because I had an understanding of how parole works. And a lot of times, if you have a prior, if you have those static things, like my first offense was when I was a teenager, that makes me at a higher risk, right? Under the current point system, under their, that they use as guidelines. And I knew that it was almost going to feel like a resentencing when I went before the parole board. And he did not get that. Like, he did not understand that at all. And the DA didn't, the judge didn't. They were like, okay, this is an appropriate sentence. We all agree that this is an appropriate sentence, with the understanding that Miss Toon is eligible for parole after a year and a half. Well, she'll do what she needs. That's up to her based on her behavior. So if you want to stay longer, then act up while you're there. If you would like to make parole, then you behave and you're eligible. And if you've behaved, then you go home. And I could not get them to, it dumbfounded me. And I mention this a lot when we talk to people, is that the officials during the court proceedings, they understood what parole was and they understood parole eligibility, but the process, they didn't know. He thought I was crazy. And guess what? I ended up doing almost 9 years on that 12-year sentence. And I continued to get denied parole year after year after year after year. And none of my behaviors changed from the first parole denial to the being granted parole 8-9 years later. Nothing changed. Nothing. It was the same reasons over and over about, nature of offense. You have a history of substance use, which you won't give me the program that I need to treat the substance use until I make parole. And it was just those same factors, those same two factors over and over. And it makes a person feel helpless. I have a best friend that did 19 years on a 20, and she got the same responses. And they would bring people down to the Braille facility to hold her up as this model inmate. She's got her bachelor's degree in her parole, her Braille stuff, and she's just amazing. She never had a disciplinary case in 19 years. Never made parole. And she was like, I don't understand. And it made us feel helpless and hopeless and not knowing what's required of us. So we did the things just because we wanted better for ourselves. We did the things that we believed would help us rehabilitate. And they did. And thank goodness that we had a lot of family support and a lot of like our spiritual faith. But just that sense of hopelessness and not really, and a lot of people just give up and they just will say, screw it. Well, then I'll just do my whole sentence and behave the way I want to. It doesn't really matter. It's just a roll of a dice. And when you feel like your life is just a roll of the dice, then nothing matters, So we're hoping that we can educate not just families and not just, legislators, but judges and DAs and, the people I felt like in my situation, they wanted to help me. I mean, I'm not saying that the DA was my best friend, certainly not, but she knew the sentence and she agreed to it with the conditions that were set forth, right? So I think those people, they want to do the right thing. They want to help. They want to see justice served. And we could get another discussion going on, but I really felt like I had the support I needed in that situation, but they just didn't understand the process.
Thank you, Jennifer. And Jennifer is just one of so many stories. And I wanted to just highlight how it is actually working. And so I also want Benny to tell his experience with parole so we can just get a firm understanding of what's actually happening. So, Benny?
Similar to Jennifer, my story is along those same lines. I received a 10-year non-aggravated sentence. And like Jennifer, both the attorney who was working, my trial attorney, and the stakeholders who were involved in this process said, oh, well, you come up and, at the time I had close to 1 year of county time. And so they said, as soon as you get to TDCJ, you're going to be eligible for parole. Well, that actually was true. So I was on the Daniel unit in 2012, and I came up for my initial parole review. And I got a 2-year set off. And the reasons that I got a 2-year set off was the nature of the crime and my criminal history. Okay, those are two static factors that I will never be able to change no matter how long I stay incarcerated. So 2 years later, I'm working on my bachelor's degree at Ramsey 1, which is an entirely different parole region from the region that I was in initially, which was it was the Amarillo region initially with Snyder. And so now I'm in the Angleton region, which is a different region of parole, and I get a 2-year set off. Same reasons, 1D, 2D. And keep in mind, I had gotten I had taken a college vocation, computer maintenance at the Daniel unit with Western Texas College, and gotten my associate degree within that 2 years between my initial review and the second review in 2014. Fast forward another 2 years, I come up for parole 2016. At this point, I decided I was going to have 6 years on this 10-year sentence, and I thought, surely I'm going to make parole this time. I hired a parole attorney. My family and I spent $10,000 on a parole attorney, and that did not help. So I got another 2-year set off for the same reasons, 1D, 2D. And so at that point, I was close to my second bachelor's degree. I was still working. I was going to school at Texas A&M at the Hughes unit at this time. And, had a few minor cases, nothing major, and I was doing well. I thought doing well during this incarceration. So 2018, I'm still on the Hughes unit, and I come up for parole again, and I get a 1-year set off. 1 year set off this time. So same reasons, 1D, 2D. And then I get transferred to another unit, 2019. I'm get another 1-year set off for 2020. And 2020, I'm on Cofield, and they give me a serve all. So I did the entire 10-year sentence day for day, for the same factors, same two reasons, the entire time that I came up for parole, which was the nature of the crime and my criminal history. Two things that I could never have changed had I stayed 30 years in TDCJ. So, I don't think the parole board was responsive to all the classes I took, to staying out of trouble, to the jobs that I held while I was in TDCJ. I was a librarian for Windham School District. I worked in the commissary. I had essentially what are called good jobs in TDCJ, and none of that stuff mattered. No matter what I did, I'd got multiple college degrees, and I still got set off after set off after set off. So I served 10 years on a 10-year sentence for a non-aggravated crime.
Thank you for sharing that with us, Benny. And if I could ask you a question, if you would have been given an individualized treatment plan when you hit TDCJ and been able to work towards being accountable in your own rehabilitation and an incentive to actually adhere to programming that would have been required, even though you did it on your own, how might that have affected your stay in TDCJ?
Actually, that's a great question, Cynthia. So if they had been given, I don't remember the first time that I got my initial ITP, but as you said, I started to look at it and cross things off on my own, but no one was working with me on this. This was something that I was doing on my own initiative, trying to fulfill these obligations that TDCJ had identified. And so it would have definitely helped, under the proposal that we as a leadership council are working on, to get people involved in their own treatment. Also to have the officials who are given this ITP held accountable in the sense that that we're doing it and we're checking this off and we're discussing it with someone, because no one ever talked to me about that while I was incarcerated. And another factor was they identified a need for substance abuse treatment, but because, as Jennifer said, I never made parole, so I was never given a treatment program. So that particular item on my ITP was never fulfilled because I had to do my entire sentence.
So what it sounds like is TDCJ did not assist in any rehabilitative services at all, that everything that you did was at your own will and that nothing changed, and nothing, the reason that they gave you for denial were things that you could do nothing about.
That is absolutely correct. And not only did they not assist in it, they made some of the things, the college classes that I was doing, harder by transferring me and making me ineligible. When I did get my first major case, I was shipped off the unit and I couldn't fulfill, I was in classes at the time, and they made it not easier, but actually more difficult.
And let me just say about that ITP, which, and we discuss this a lot when we have meetings, that, TDCJ will say that it exists. It's there. Like Benny said, it's there. You can ask for a copy. Maybe they'll give it to you. Maybe you can write classification and you just have to cross those things off yourself. It's never updated. It's never looked at again. It's just this formality that they do, much like the parole interview, feels like very much like a formality. And I remember when I was in prison this last time, and I was like, I really want to work on, whatever this is that I need to work on. And I wrote classification for my ITP, and they sent me the same one that I had when I was 18 years old. I kid you not. And it still had on there, get your GED or your high school diploma. And it's like, okay, thank you so much. This was so helpful. So when we talk about that ITP, we're talking about some tool that is really useful and helpful, and not just them determining if we've, made progress, but for us to be able to actively participate. Because when I mean that people lose hope and they feel hopeless, it's because I'm directionless. I don't have any guidance. Didn't have a lot of direction, and within myself, obviously I ended up here, so please don't leave me alone to make decisions on my own right now. I really need some guidance and some help. And it's not there. And for people that do their whole sentence, well, they don't ever get into those programs. Like you just talked about, they don't ever get into those treatment programs. I was offered substance abuse treatment, at the very end of my sentence. I hadn't had a drink in 9 years. So it's like, when we talk about doing something different with parole, the SLC is really demanding that parole be more efficient for not just us, but for our communities overall.
That's a great point, Jennifer, and for taxpayers in general, because we're needlessly spending all this money on incarceration when we could be using it for other things. One of the things that I want to touch on that you talked about was the rehabilitation program within TDCJ not updating my ITP. So when I hired the attorney, he and I reviewed the ITP, and he says, wait a minute, they have a need for a 2-year college degree in a vocation. I said, I did that 3 years ago, and no one had updated that information until he actually reached out to him and said, whoa, wait a minute, my client already took this. And so it took someone on the outside, and I tried doing it myself. I went through the I-60 process and all that, and even filed a grievance on it to get it updated. And it wasn't until someone from the outside actually started making phone calls that it was updated.
So I just want to kind of put this in perspective for someone who may be on the outside looking in. And I know when I was sentenced, I was told, you just get down there, you just be good, and you're going to go on home. And that is what you believe. If you get down there and you just be good, you're going to go home. And so once people start seeing that there is absolutely nothing that I could ever do that will ever change the nature of my crime, nothing. And there's nothing that will ever change the fact that I have a criminal background or this drug problem that I ended up in prison for. So it's just very ineffective to know that you're going to go down there and it doesn't matter what you do. You know, people just don't understand that whenever they're talking about, oh, well, she got 10 years, but she'll be eligible for parole and whatever. No, they're probably going to end up doing that full time. Or really, there's no rhyme or reason to it. And that is one thing that I know that we have members who have spoken to judges, and judges firmly believe that if we get down there and we just be good, we're going to go home. And defense attorneys believe if you sign for this, you're just going to get down there and you're going to go home. And prosecutors like, well, if we offer them this, they'll have this much time to go down there and get parole. And it's just not, there's a disconnect somewhere. And so I just want to ask Jennifer and Benny, you know, what was it like to know that you want to have control of your rehabilitation? You don't want to come back to prison.
Right.
And
Well, and Maggie, I can tell you right now, like that feeling of, okay, so I remember being in jail, just laying on the floor in the drunk tank. And I remember thinking, why do I keep doing this to myself? Why in the world am I back here? Like, this is the last place in the world that I thought I would ever be back. What is wrong with me? Like, why do I keep doing this? I need help. I need someone to really help me stop this cycle. And that when I left jail to TDCJ, I really went with the intention in my spirit and in my emotion and my mental well-being of, I want to fix this and I want to change and I want to be productive and I want to live my potential. I want to stop hurting people. I want to stop hurting myself. And you get down there and you don't know what direction to go, and wanting that and not really having anyone deeply work with you on that. I just feel like there's a lot of surface level things that are offered when you get incarcerated. And there was nobody working on that ITP with me to really understand what were my needs for rehabilitation. And just kind of doing that on my own. Yeah, it was kind of scary because it's like, I'm not even sure if I'm doing this right. And thank God, thank God that I was. But you know, what about the other people that just give up because they don't have that internal locus of control to be able to figure out, you know, what are the right things that I need to do, and learning how to connect to those things when I got out into the community. Because as much as I hated Safe P, and there's a lot of things that need to change about Safe P, don't get me wrong. But having that component of some type of therapy and some type of case management when I got home, it helped me a lot. So why can't we get that on the front end? Why can't we get that in the middle of the sentence? Why can't, you know, this model of case management, why can't that be implemented more thoroughly during your incarceration period?
You're right, Jennifer, and it should be, right? So for someone who is down there and, you know, getting set off, it's disheartening. You know, I came to prison with the mentality that I was going to change myself internally, and I started working towards those steps to work on me. No one from TDCJ ever came to me and said, this is what you can do to better yourself. It was all an internal drive that I wanted to do on my own. Nevertheless, it would have been a bit beneficial for someone from TDCJ to sit down with me to identify what I needed to do in their eyes, you know, for this parole, to make parole or whatever. But I was already dedicated to doing that on my own. And Jennifer's right. Not everyone's there. Not everyone has that educational background or even the understanding to know what's available and what to do, you know, and people need guidance.
Well, I want to address something in the comments that Jorge said, that even when you put these things into place, it's still, they have their discretion, right? And unfortunately, that yes, that's true. But fortunately, that is true, right? So, I mean, it's a double-edged sword, I feel like. But the thing is this, I don't feel like legislators are going to remove parole's discretion anytime soon. I don't believe that's going to happen anytime soon. So what are the things that are within our control? I mean, we can certainly ask and maybe try in the future to maybe work on the parole process from that angle, but I just don't think that's an effective use of our time. For me, I don't know, but I feel like that's the route that we've taken as SLC, to work on the things that we have control of, because it really goes a long way, right, Benny, to be able to have something while you're in there that makes you feel like, and I think this is why families hire parole attorneys, is because it gives them a sense of, I'm doing something in this process instead of just sitting here staring at the wall while people make decisions about me that I'm not included in. And I don't know, I just feel like that we have to really stay focused on the things that currently I feel like can be changed. If that was helpful, Jorge, I know he doesn't agree with me, that's okay.
Absolutely. And a part of the common sense parole bill is accountability, right? Accountability on the incarcerated individual, as well as accountability for parole, to provide a concise pathway to rehabilitation, to make sure that they are indeed putting people back into the communities that have access programming that are conducive to their own rehabilitation. So it may not be the ideal answer, but it is an answer. And it is a pathway. It is something that we can come to a median on, so that people are able to access programming for the things that they need as soon as they enter into TDCJ, because what you need when you enter in is not what you need 9 years later. And so that there is accountability on the parole side to make sure that they are giving people the things that they need so that they can be rehabilitated, so that they are indeed putting people back into the community that are productive members of the community, so that they are gaining parole access to individuals who are exercising and choosing to use their time wisely in accessing this program, so that the individual that is trying to do things and make choices, healthy choices, to move towards their rehabilitation is not denied 9 times or given a serve all, when the individual that has been not working towards some of those same goals is released back, and we're all categorized one and together. So we're asking for accountability. There is no perfect window, there is no perfect policy that exists, but this is a policy that gives accountability on both ends. And this is a policy that will definitely raise the bar and the standard for parole, and maybe give them a different window to look at some of the individuals who are incarcerated instead of grouping them all together. And it's very educational for judges, DAs, attorneys. And because, like some of the people on the panel have said, they are thinking that eligibility means you're going home. So this is very educational for people to understand that, one, eligibility does not mean you're going home, and that there is not even a criteria that is set in place for people to achieve to be able to go home, which is why TDCJ says that they incarcerate people to rehabilitate them. So we're only asking them to be accountable for what they say is the reason for incarceration in the first place.
Benny, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I just want to address that, what Jennifer said. I mean, there are so many things that we can identify within the system, right? And in a perfect world, that discretion would be taken away, and we would need a parole board if you would just do A, B, and C, you know. But the Texas Board of Pardons and Parole was created by a constitutional amendment, and to do away with that, you would need a constitutional amendment. I don't know if that's possible within the political climate that we have today, but one of the things that I wanted to mention and talk about is, not only Jennifer said, you know, at that point in my incarceration, 6 years, I hired the parole attorney because I knew from previous research that the amount of casework that the parole members, the commissioners have, doesn't allow them much time to actually dig into the facts of the case and look at individual, what each individual is doing. At the time, someone had done a report that said they spend an average of about 3 or 4 minutes on each case. So I thought if I hired someone and got that attorney along with my family members in front of the commissioner or the board member, that they would spend an hour on this and they would give it deep thought. And even that didn't work. But on the same token, I remember receiving a set off, and my sister tells me, she says, "What are you doing down there? You are screwing up. You know, you have to be doing something. Otherwise, you would have come home by now." And I said, "Sis, no, they're just making me do this all. You know, there's nothing that I'm doing on my part." But family members, even our own family members at times don't understand the process and what's going on. They think that we're down there, you know, messing up. And that's not true.
No, I absolutely, Benny, I agree. My dad said the same thing to me. And he was mad. We were sitting in visitation, and it was after about the third set off. He said, "You're lying to me." He said, "I don't know what you're in there doing, but you're lying to me." I said, "Daddy, I'm not. I don't know how to explain this to you." And I think maybe right now would be a good point for us to kind of break this down to anybody that's listening who doesn't, who parole is new to them. So they see Shawshank Redemption, or they see movies where the person sits in front of the board and they have these questions and this engagement and there's this thought and no, that's not the way it works in Texas. You've got a parole counselor who does your interview when you go to parole, which basically after she fills out that first couple of pages of paperwork, that's what it is. And then anytime you see her, let's say you get a set off and you have to come back the next year and she interviews you again, she's going to ask you, let me tell you what happened to me. She asked me every time she saw me, "Well, Miss Toom, do you think this time is the time?" I said, "Well, I don't know." She goes, "Okay, do you have anything new? Do you have anything you need to, is anything changed in your paperwork or anything changed?" I said, "No, ma'am." She was like, "Okay, well, you'll know in about 2 or 3 months." It's a formality. It doesn't really do anything. It doesn't mean anything. They just fill out some paperwork and gives the incarcerated person an opportunity to turn in a certificate or a letter or something. And she's supposed to put that into your file, right? Well, so each region has its own board. So there's 3 people sitting there in their office separately from each other. They're not sitting in front of the incarcerated person. They're in their own offices. Like Benny said, they've got 2 or 3 minutes. They've got a huge caseload. And they get their file, your file. You're just a file. You're just what's on paper. And I don't look good on paper. You know what I mean? So they look at it, denied. They send it to the second person. They say denied. We're done with the process. If that second person says, "I approve," it goes to the third person, and then they get to decide, "Yeah, let's go ahead and approve her. And I think maybe she should go to Safe B." And that's the process. There is no interaction. There is no thoughtful consideration. They're doing what they can with 2 or 3 minutes with a big stat. Well, it's computerized now, but you remember them old folders, the red ones. Mine was very worn. But so they're only spending 2 or 3 minutes on this file, and then they hit send and it's gone. They don't even talk to their coworker. It's not like that. It's a very impersonal process. It's not like what you see on TV. So, and kind of this goes back into like our families not really understanding, well, like, what are you doing in there? I'm not doing anything. To them, I'm just this impersonal file on their computer, because of their caseload. So I'm glad that you brought that up, Benny.
And I wanted to just say, I'm glad that you said that, Jennifer. On paper, I look terrible. I would not hang out with me. If you looked at my background, I don't think they would allow me in the Capitol to be talking about anything, but I'm not who I am on paper. And the day that I went into prison, I wasn't thinking, man, this is fun. I hope I don't get out, And one thing I think that people don't realize, and family members and all that, is we're not all sentenced to life sentences. We're not all sentenced to long sentences. Even that 1, 2, 3 year sentence, you lose everything. You have no rehabilitation inside. And then you're thrown back into this society that has already disposed of you. So this is something that I think is holistically needed. You know, our judges need to know what they're doing when they're sentencing us to these long sentences. The DAs need to know, you know, if you're going to prison, you need to do this, this, and this, and this, you know, because everybody doesn't end up in prison because they on their best day, you know. I'm gonna get up, I'm gonna go and, you know, put on my best clothes and I'm going to prison. There's something happened. And so we need to start focusing on that. So whenever we do come home and we are neighbors and we are working at the stores, or I am walking into the Capitol, you know, I'm not that same person that was sentenced so many years ago. And so this is a reason why I believe that parole and this whole ITP plan needs to be looked at a lot differently, because there's so many misconceptions out there. And it's not how it works.
Yes, and I would just add to that, that we have to collectively rally together and be a society that is never past redemption for anyone, because essentially these individuals are coming to your communities and their children are going to school with your children. They're riding the bus with you. They're in the grocery store with you. So to oppress one sector of people, to marginalize a certain group of individuals, is essentially to weigh your own community down. So it would behoove us all to collectively get together and talk to our judges, talk to our DAs, go to our state representatives and say, we may not like them or we may not have lived the life that they live, but we do want them to thrive because they are a part of our community. And how do we do that together? Because if they lose, we lose.
And that's why I love the Statewide Leadership Council, because we are all people who understand the inside. We understand the system. And we are all doing something to better our lives. And we are all reaching back for that person who may come behind us. And the Statewide Leadership Council, I believe, is so powerful because we are not disposable. And there are a bunch of awesome people. You should really, you know, spend some time with us. So I'm gonna let Benny and Jennifer add anything, and then we'll talk about the scripts.
I don't have anything to add. I think we pretty much addressed this. So.
Oh, I think that's it for now, because I'll lead us into other things that are off topic about the criminal justice system. You know, I get fired up, Maggie. I get
I
fired
know.
up. I'm sweating right now talking about parole.
Yeah.
Maybe one day we can just have an hour-long session on TDCJ, trash TD. No, I'm just kidding. We're not going to trash TDCJ today.
We're going to identify the issues that need to be addressed, and each and every one of us has experienced those issues, and the SLC members have, and we're going to do it in a way that's effective to bring about policy change.
Correct. So when I first got out, I didn't know anything about policy change. I didn't know about reaching out to my local officials. All I knew is that there were women sitting inside that prison cell dying of heat, taking showers with maggots in the drain, eating disgusting food. And I thank God that I made it out. And I knew somebody needed to know what the hell was going on in there. And you know, people sit up on their hilltops and don't know what's going on inside. It's just understood that it runs a certain way, and it doesn't run this way. And we need to tell these people how it is running, and hopefully we can make some changes. So we're going to put in the chat a website tool that will help you to reach out to your local officials, find out who represents you, and get the contact information that you need so that you can make phone calls and say, hey, do you know this is what's happening? Parole is not really a tool that is functioning as it should be. And we would like to set up a meeting, or we would like to talk to you, or we would like to give you our contact info so we can speak together to help make changes this session. You know, so we're going to put the tool in the chat, and then we also have a phone script, a sample phone script. So whenever you're calling your judges, your local officials, or anybody in your community, you have something to go on. And then we'll also put the email in the script, in the chat, the sample email. And so my name is Maggie Luna, mluna@texascjc.org, mluna@texascjc.org. If you would like to be a part of the Statewide Leadership Council and you would like access to our infographics or our legislative proposals, please reach out to me and I will love to add you to our list. And I'm going to let everybody else give out their information so you can contact any of us. And if you are having trouble accessing the stuff, just let me know and I will send it directly to you.
I'm Cynthia Simons, and I have put my email address in the chat. So if you want to reach out to collaborate or work together in this initiative to the Statewide Leadership Council, I'd be happy to hear from you. If you have a women's justice issue, I'd be happy to hear from you. Jennifer?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was looking at who they were making committees for the House, and I'm sorry.
Oh, they are?
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at. We'll talk when we get off here.
Yeah.
I was like, wait a minute, I don't see certain names. I was getting, yeah. So Jennifer Toon, you can reach me at Facebook, Jennifer Charlene Toon. You can send me a message. You can also reach me on Twitter, and it's Jennifer Toon _4. I don't know why it's #4. Twitter assigned that to me, so that's what it is. But you can definitely reach out to me anytime you want. Having any questions about the SLC, criminal justice, yeah, do it.
And you can also contact me at Benny Hernandez III on Facebook, send me a message, or through the SLC. If I can help any of you guys, if you aren't sure, what in the way to address elected officials or your judges, contact me directly, and I don't mind reviewing stuff with you or helping out in any way I can.
So I know all of you are just ready to get into action and you're just going to be calling me and hitting me up. So I'm going to go ahead and go find out who our committee members are so we can start reaching out to them. Thank you everybody for showing up today and spending your 42 minutes with us. Have a wonderful weekend.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.